Thank you so much for joining us. Very big welcome to you, wherever you are in the world. This is the last of our 6 webinars live from COP27. And we've got, as usual, we've got passionate speakers and the latest updates. So because we're nearly at the end of COP27, we're going to take a little bit of time today to look at what have been the COP27 highs and lows for people. So let's first of all just go around the table and introduce our wonderful speakers, starting off with yourself, Alistair. A short introduction, please.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Alistair Mullen, and I'm here as a party delegate for Papua New Guinea, and I'm the senior carbon advisor to the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. Hello everybody.
Absolutely amazing. Amanda, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. I'm Amanda Lang. I'm the president of North American Young Generation Nuclear, and I'm here with a coalition of other nonprofits. We're at the Nuclear for Climate booth, just talking about nuclear as carbon-free energy to help us meet our 2050 goals.
Okay, Amanda, thank you for that. We've got a little bit of a sound problem with yourself. Are you able to...
Is that better?
That's much better, yeah. Do you want to start again? So, Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Charles. Amanda Lang. I'm the president of North American Young Generation Nuclear, and we're here with Nuclear for Climate. We have a booth to talk to people about the importance of nuclear energy in meeting our climate change goals.
Fantastic. So pleased you're able to talk to us about nuclear, and we're going to ask you some tough questions later, Amanda, okay?
All right, I'm ready.
Before we do that, we're going to start with Alistair, but before we do that, Liz, Christou, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your book? Because I think you're the only climate author here.
Hello. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Liz Christou. I wrote the book Spend Green and Save the World, and it's all about what we can do as individuals and with our consumer hat on, the actions we can take to help improve our footprint and help change the system as well. So here to talk a little bit about what we can do at home, basically, if it all feels a bit distant, COP27 in Egypt.
That's fantastic. So, Alistair, you've been in Egypt for the whole time, yeah? So tell us, how's COP27 been for you, Alistair?
Good cop, bad cop. Which ones? Definitely in the former, good cop. That's just myself. It's been draining to get across to everybody who's never experienced a COP and hear that 35,000 people have traveled here by a lot by private jet. I'll not comment on the private jets, but I will comment on the air miles used to get here. It's only my second COP. I was in Glasgow, so that wasn't many air miles for me. This has been the most frenzied week, I would say, or 2 weeks of my life in such a positive way. I'm a former financier. My job is to get money for the rainforests. I spent the whole of last year just trying to do that and delivered 0.00 to them in finance. And I was almost, however, we built an institutional infrastructure in that 1 year. We've got Deutsche Bank teaming up with us. We have the European Energy Exchange. We have EY. And we have several more banking partners likely to come on board. I will go on record as saying we're going to get billions raised from these 2 weeks. Billions. Yeah, with a view to getting hundreds of billions for rainforest nations. We're signing agreements with all the countries. We have the supply, and we need the polluter to pay to get our dreams going. And I've had 20, 30 meetings with major clients, CEO level, C-suite. There is a change out there that I'm staggered by. And I think the terms that I'm coming away with, we've built our one-pager now and spent a year trying to build a one-pager. And what we do is we deliver compliance carbon assets as part of the Paris Agreement. We deliver them at scale, and we need the money to deliver them at scale. And the new word that we put in from this week is climate justice, because 95% of our proceeds will go to the governments. And then within that, we have FPIC, free, prior, informed consent regulation that makes sure that the money goes down to the indigenous on the floor. It's just as important. And it's the amalgam of carbon is now a sovereign asset as per the Paris Agreement, but also important to protect land rights. in
Okay,
the bottom. So
Alistair, let's just slow down a little bit. Hold you up, because as always, you're running ahead and telling us so much. So what I managed to hear, the most important things, is that within these 2 weeks, you are expecting to raise billions of dollars for carbon credits within these 2 weeks, and you see that can lead the way to hundreds of billions of dollars in the next few years. Okay, so just to explain to people a little bit, just to sort of take this one step at a time, what this is all about. This is all about polluters. Many of those in the West, in the UK, Europe, the US, like ourselves. It's about the big polluters paying for carbon offsets to plant trees and stop deforestation in the tropical rainforests like the Amazon, the Congo, Indonesia, etc. Right. So just give us the perspective on that, Alistair. So what is this sea change that you're seeing? Why are the polluters suddenly going to be prepared to spend a load of money on protecting and planting trees? Just give us your view on that, Alistair.
As ever, I can speak for hours or just a very, very short time. I'll make sure it's a short time. 3 words, ARL, 3 letters even, ARL. A is activism. So the pressure that the good people around here and all of us are putting onto the corporates. Activism is a very powerful force, and activism is in whichever form you deem fit. R is probably the biggest one of the ARL, regulation. So our big term is that carbon is now going on balance sheets. It's going to be on the corporate balance sheet. I even had music to my ears, corporates telling me that carbon is now on their balance sheets. You can't offset your way to 1.5 degrees. We never have tried to. You need to manage your carbon on your balance sheet and pay fair value for that carbon. And the final one is L, and the threat of L, the threat of litigation. Litigation cases are rising massively. So the collective of A, R, and L, activism, regulation, litigation, are driving change. And change is coming very quickly, as it needs to.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Now, you started telling us, Alistair, you started telling us about how 95% of the money would go to the governments. Do you want to just talk a little bit more about that? What you're meaning there, please?
Yeah, so in the voluntary carbon market, there was a survey the other day that anywhere between 30 and 50% of the money spent on carbon credits, carbon units, go to the developers, go to intermediaries, excess profit. And the whole purpose of the amount of climate finance we have is de minimis. It needs to grow, but whatever we have, we need to make sure as much of it can. It's like giving money to charity. You don't want 50% going to the heads of the charity driving around in Rolls Royces. So we commit that 95% minimum goes direct to the country, and that's part of our deeds effectively. That's a significant move away from, say, the voluntary carbon market, where those numbers will be in the 10, 15, 20, up to 50% can go. So that's positives there. We then get questioned on, can these governments then make sure that that carbon is allocated, the money for the carbon is allocated efficiently, of which we have 2 answers. One's a bit flippant and one's what people want to hear. The first flippancy is there is a sort of slightly colonial, this is an asset. Carbon offsets are an asset. And dictating where the money's spent is a bit colonial. We never dictate how the Saudis spend the money when we buy their oil. However, we do listen, and people do want to make sure these monies are recycled and go to the good causes. So every country that we generate carbon credits from, we make sure there's legislation at the national level, there's statute that has a waterfall structure where outlines where these proceeds will go. They are general sovereign proceeds, so they won't go 100% into the rainforest. They are for the good of the nation. That will be including going to alternative energy sources, etc. So it's not just as simple as you put the money in and it goes back into the forest. Life isn't that simple, and that's not the optimum angle. Most importantly, what we do, getting a bit technical here, shout me if I get too technical, everything we do comes off the NDC of that country. So when we take carbon, there are 2 schools of thought, and there's a theological debate in carbon, and it's about corresponding and a corresponding adjustments set out of a country. The voluntary market, like stay in that country and then sits on a net zero claim. We don't believe that is the way forward. When you take oil out of a country, you use it, it doesn't sit in the reserves of that country. So when we take the carbon from the NDC of that country, makes their NDC position worse, which means they have to work even harder to get some more credits next year. That is the way. This is the global carbon accounting system under the Paris Agreement. We're very much driving that. A force for good. And I probably lost him.
We've just lost you, Alistair. Do you just want to cover that again?
Yeah,
You're saying that the carbon comes.
It was probably the right time to lose me anyway before I bored everybody.
Okay, but just as important point though, that what you're saying is that say trees are planted in Papua New Guinea. What you're saying is that under the scheme that you're talking about, those trees will count towards the NDC of Papua New Guinea. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the theological debate is once you have the way that the world of carbon is going to work under Article 6 is that it's the outperformance of countries are going to be able to sell the outperformance of their NDC. The NDC is a liability. It's the nationally determined contribution. It's the carbon balance sheet. It's a negative. You can't sell that. You can sell outperformances of it. So that's what we're in. So we're selling forestry outperformances of the country's NDC. It's quite complex, but it needs to be.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, the other question people are going to have on this is that there's another theological difference here between planting new trees, which remove CO2 emissions, and avoided emissions from stopping deforestation. So in what you're doing, what do you see as the balance between planting new trees and stopping deforestation? How does that work in your equation?
Let me make it a big public statement. Number one, we do zero avoided deforestation. You can't avoid your way to net zero. You have to reduce and remove carbon. So within our methodology, massive difference versus the voluntary carbon market. Voluntary carbon market proliferates on picking a nice plot of land, putting a fence around it and saying that might have disappeared, and selling carbon credits. We believe those are inflated hot air. So we only sell reductions and removes. All of our countries have, if you take Papua New Guinea, in the last 5 years, they've generated 250 million tons of reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from forestry, not avoidance. So critical there. I know, Charles, your passion for creating new trees, all well and good and very supportive of it. It does zero to save the world at the speed and scale we want. You know, if we lose these forests, we're absolutely buggered, pardon my language. So very supportive of the trees, but it's not what we do. We're here to get institutional money at speed, at scale. As the IPCC have stated, it's not planting trees that's going to save the world, it's stopping rainforest deforestation. So I'm very black and white on that. When we go to the capital markets, all supportive of lots of little initiatives, hand on heart, they can't do what we need them to do. We are here to represent 50 countries that control, as governments, the rainforest nations. And if we can work with them, get the polluter to pay, it is the only chance we have getting to 1.5 degrees. And if people contribute in the meantime, as I think the lovely lady is going to talk to us about how we do it ourselves, very simple. We can all do our own little bit. I'm privileged, my background, that I'm in the capital markets. We need hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and that ain't going to come from planting trees. But it doesn't stop us from all doing our own little bit.
Alistair, thank you so much for that amazing perspective, as always from you. So just before we let you go, with everything else going on at COP, what are you seeing? Are you seeing from everything else going on? Are you seeing progress? Are you seeing progress towards everybody else cutting CO2, progress towards 1.5?
Yeah.
What are you seeing from all the discussions going on?
Glasgow is very much about the text and getting all these nations to commit to the 2050 program. I think it was India came in at 2070, and then China at 2060. Been none of those big declarations this year. Been deemed to be the implementation COP. There have been no promises, and promises don't deliver when governments make promises, as we all know. So I can't think of one declaration there's been. It's a massively positive thing. This is the implementation COP. There's loads of side deals going on. And the text is going to go way late into the night. I don't think we're going to finish tonight. I think it will be Saturday before we get an official statement. There's quite a few very, very technical disagreements. It's normally the global north versus the global south. The one thing that I have heard that's kind of new to me is the two new entrants who are going to be very active in climate going forward. And there was a paper by Lord Stern. I had the privilege of an hour with Lord Stern yesterday. And it's the MDBs, the multinational development banks, are going to start possibly even get recapitalized significantly. And that could happen in a very short period of time, get leverage within that. So that's a big positive. They will be coming into the carbon markets. And there is a growing sense that philanthropic money is very much coming in. And we all know how much there is of that. So those are the two, that plus corporates, plus the banking system, we have a chance.
Okay, so just let's understand this. If we're not going to have this text that we're so used to, we're used to the text, the commitments and the pledges. If we're not going to get that, how is the world going to see the implementation that's been happening at
Oh no, we will get the text. I think it's going to be delayed. We were up till 4 o'clock last night in my team, and it's always arguing over commas and full stops. It's the dark art of climate negotiations. Bearing in mind, one nation can torpedo the whole text. That's why it takes so long. So
Yeah.
there's always fun and high games, getting what you want, moving a comma, putting a semicolon on, and this stuff does go on as the climate burns, you know. So we will get a text. I don't think it'll be 5 o'clock tonight when it's supposed to be out. I think it will be in the very early hours of this.
Okay. Well, Alistair, anything else you'd like to say before you go?
No, I am going to have to go. Shame I can't listen to the lovely lady who's going to speak about what we can do.
Yeah.
Big
Alistair,
picture that I'm at.
so many thanks to you for joining us, and do go and spend the rest of the day raising another $1 billion for the rainforest. Okay, that will help us all. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Take care.
Bye, Alistair. Okay, folks, so just recovering from being Alistair there. Those of us who know him know we have to take things very, very slowly. So, Amanda, let's come to you next. Very, very different subject. Talking about nuclear. But first of all, tell us, Amanda, how's COP27 been for you?
So this is my first COP, and it's been a wild ride. So I'm just here for week 2, and I'm still pretty exhausted, but it is exhilarating. So many great conversations. We have lots of people who were in our shirts that talk about nuclear, you know, ask us why. And we have people approach us in the hallways, come up to our booth. And really, I've been surprised at how open-minded people are and willing to have the conversation. So it's been great.
Okay, if you can come just a little bit closer to the microphone. Okay, so obviously, people generally have got some concerns about nuclear, but let's start off with what I think are the really, really important issues. Report after report is coming out, which is saying that solar and wind are both a lot cheaper than nuclear. Now, obviously, the world works on money. So is this true? Is this not true? What's happening here, Amanda? Give us the real story on this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people point to wind and solar and they look at the, you know, astronomical growth it's had. But still, wind and solar provide a very small percentage of the global electricity energy market overall. And so, yes, it's growing. It's been subsidized. People are super supportive of wind and solar and have been since about 2000, right? And so if it really was, we only needed renewables, I think you would see that they would be a larger percentage of the overall energy mix than they are today. So getting to your point about, you know, can you compare the cost of nuclear versus wind and solar? I think one thing you need to take in mind is the lifetime of these assets. So a nuclear power plant, they can go for 60, 80, maybe longer years. Wind and solar, you know, they have a 25, 30-year lifespan. And so, yes, there is some upfront capital costs for nuclear that aren't in these other sources, but you get the payoff on a much longer term. So it's a long-term strategy. And so you need that financing from a government entity or another big player to really invest in this long term.
Okay. So do you want to tell us a bit about what really is happening? Because we've not heard, as far as I've seen, nuclear's not been mentioned in any of the highlights from COP27. So what's happening? Have you got new nations committing to nuclear? Have you got new nuclear plants being purchased? What's happening with nuclear, Amanda?
Yeah, so a couple things. President Biden announced a couple days ago Project Phoenix. So this is an SMR or Small Modular Reactor project that they are going to build for hydrogen production use purposes. And this build will occur in Ukraine. So that partnership was very exciting. We are also excited to hear about nuclear in Africa and the possibilities there. The International Atomic Energy Agency has focused on some case studies, specifically Kenya, but the United States is partnering with Ghana as well. So these projects for bringing small modular reactors to Africa, supplying abundant energy for decades to come. Right now, we need the climate financing in place to make these projects a reality.
So a lot of us are from the UK, and in the UK, we're very, very concerned about the cost of the Hinkley Point C nuclear plant. Now, as the cost of energy has gone up, I think we can now see that maybe actually that was good value. But I think a big question people are going to ask about SMRs. Obviously, SMRs, it's a new technology, but basically, is it going to be a lower price per megawatt than the conventional reactors, Amanda?
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways that SMRs come out cheaper. One, your capital investment is not as big, and also your time to build. So you don't have to pay interest while you're not producing power as long as a period, right? So for a large 1,000 megawatt plant that takes 10 years, 5 to 10 years to build versus an SMR that can come online much quicker. And so you're experiencing returns from your investment much quicker. So that's one way. And then the second way is really in that M part of the SMR, so modular. So the concept is that these reactors can be factory built, delivered on a semi-truck or on a train, and then you really get economies of scale. You're pumping out multiple modules, and so as you experience overall savings in terms of the dollar per megawatt hour.
Amazing, amazing answer. Thank you. So what we're seeing is these pictures of Hinkley Point C, which is this inside the reactor being constructed. We're seeing this absolutely enormous stadium-sized wall of concrete and incredible complexity. So what you're saying is that all that can be replaced by basically a modular reactor arriving on a ship, being collected on a big lorry, and just being driven around Kenya to its home, and then it being offloaded, and then starting up producing nuclear power in the country just within a short time.
Yeah, and one thing that I find really exciting, my background is in fuel design and core design. And so some of these small modular reactors, you can design them such that the core can last 7-10 years. So you're really just delivering it once, plopping the module down, and then you don't have to think about it again in terms of refueling.
Okay, so sorry, you're saying that the core lasts, did you say 7 to 10 years?
Yes, it really, there are many different designs, but yes, it's much longer than cores that we have today, than reactor cores we have today. So right now, we replace the fuel regularly.
Yeah. So, okay, but with the small modular reactor, that raises the question then, well, at the end of the 7 to 10 years, how do you replace the fuel at that point?
So it depends on the specific SMR technology. There's many different options out there. But some of the ones that are further along in the process, they just treat the core itself as modular. So kind of like we have in the United States for a long time, our Navy nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers, right? So we just replace the entire core at once instead of trying to do a fuel reload. So the core would be treated as modular as well. You would bring in a new configuration.
So we'll come to Liz in a minute to talk about consumer reaction to nuclear, but I think it's important, Amanda, that we put on the table some of the issues that people do see with solar and wind, and certainly there's a big concern. I mean, in the UK, we have a situation where in winter we have cold days because it's winter. The level of sun is very, very low, and on those cold days we have virtually no wind either. So people are concerned with solar and wind that basically we can have days, and those days obviously can extend into weeks. And with climate uncertainty, those could be multiple weeks. We could have weeks with no solar and wind, so we need something else. So certainly that's been a very, very big justification for nuclear. So when we bring all this so what's your comment on this whole process of nuclear versus the versus the intermittent nature of solar and wind?
Yeah, and so our message is together is better. I think we need all tools in the tool belt. So solar, wind, renewables, hydro, they are important, right? But solar and wind, they have that intermittency and a pretty low capacity factor. And so that's why nuclear can be there for that base load and the abundant energy needed. And so I think really we're a great partner, and we can contribute a lot in rapid decarbonization.
Okay, so what I'm reading is in Africa, you mentioned Africa, and what I'm reading is that Africa over the last year has been very, very slow in doing anything. They've been doing very slow with renewables. Certainly because of the temperatures there, Africa should be very good for solar. So how do you see in Africa, how do you see this balance of solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, nuclear? How do you see this balance specific to Africa?
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons I decided to become a nuclear engineer is, one, I cared about the climate, but two, I also cared about energy abundance. So I think we need to take a step back and realize that 13% of the world's population doesn't have access to electricity. So they need every type of generation they can get. And nuclear is so energy dense that if we can give them that is life-changing for an entire continent. And so I want nuclear to be there along with wind and solar, because I don't want them to be having an unstable electricity grid, experiencing brownouts, not having Wi-Fi when they need it, lights when they need it, being able to, it really unlocks the door to innovation, education, equal opportunity, especially when it comes to gender rights. There's so much power in energy that we need to bring everything to the table when it comes to Africa.
Amazing. So here we are used to almost 100% uptime with electricity. And so what you're saying is that the world population this week became 8 billion, and you're now saying that 13%, which is about 1 billion people, do not have proper access to electricity. So amazing argument, Amanda, that we need as much electricity as we can to help those people who are who don't have access to it. So amazing. So look, let's come over to Liz. We'll ask you about your consumer movement in a minute, but just on this amazing subject of nuclear, what's your take on the argument, that there's a need for nuclear? What are consumers, do you think, saying about nuclear?
I mean, obviously I can't speak for everybody, but I do, I guess, understand why there's reservations around nuclear. I guess it's probably a bit of an instinct thing that says that perhaps renewables and using natural energy sources might be a better way to go. But at the same time, I think people do need to be open to having that conversation and understanding more about nuclear before they kind of write it off. Yeah, I think it might be something necessary that we do need to go down that road as well, because we are so short on time.
Yeah, we're short on time, we're short on power. Amazing. Yeah, fantastic. So Liz, I mean, I know you've not been at you're not actually at COP27, but what's your take on it? What's been happening? What have you seen that's going on? I
was quite blown away by what Alistair was saying actually earlier. That was amazingly positive, wasn't it? That was great. Yeah, that's made me feel a lot more positive about COP actually, because I think, I made the comment the other day about it being Einstein's definition of insanity, where it seems to be we keep having COPs, but nothing's really progressing and moving ahead as it should be. So if things are changing this year, if there does seem to be that much more appetite from big business to actually take ownership of their carbon, then that's fantastic. That's great. Obviously, I would disagree with him on his last point that what we do as individuals doesn't make that much difference. I know he was talking about getting money, financing, stopping rainforest deforestation. And I think that's, of course, incredibly important. I think it is going to have an absolutely huge impact. I'm sure he's right on that. But what I would say is it's not delving into the root cause of the problem. So it's basically saying throw money at the problem and it's all going to be fine. And I just don't think that's the case. The reason that we've got ourselves into this mess is because of the mindset that we're all living in, where we're basically stuck in a system that sort of feeds off of our greedy part of our nature and wanting more and wanting to buy more and wanting to have more and wanting to make more profit all the time. If that's what we continue to be focused on, then it's not sustainable. You know, it's not sustainable to carry on living like that. So we do have to take a look at, you know, the way that we think about things, and break free of that kind of overconsumption trap that we're in at the moment. I think that's vital. You know, I think the sort of argument of, oh, it needs to be businesses sorting it out, no, it needs to be governments, it needs to be individuals. I think that argument's completely redundant now. You know, we don't have time to even have that argument. Don't get sucked in. I think, you know, we all need to be doing what we can to solve this problem.
Okay, so you've got an amazing phrase here. You've got this overconsumption trap that we seem to be in. Just help people with that, because what I see is that we're so caught up in behaviors. We're so used to how things are. We just talked about it. You know, we're used to electricity 100% uptime. I mean, how could we handle a situation if we only had electricity for 12 hours a day instead of 24? You know, we're used to these behavioral things. So do you want to just talk us through some of the behavioral aspects of this overconsumption trap as you see it? What are we used to that we could actually relatively easily change? How do you see this one, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, it is just built up all around us, isn't it? It's everything. It's all the marketing. I think we're exposed to like thousands and thousands of adverts every day without even realizing that we're seeing them. It is all around us. It is so difficult to break out of, seemingly, but actually I think it's just quite simple if you break it down, that we need to understand that is what's happening. We need to understand that we are caught in this trap. We need to understand that it's not benefiting our well-being and that it's destroying the planet. And actually there are things that we can do to break free that will benefit us right now in the present as individuals, as well as the greater good. So I think once we can kind of understand that and see that it's not benefiting us to live this way, you know, to keep wanting just to buy stuff, to be stuck in our sort of primal brain rather than thinking in a more analytical brain about how to solve problems and how to survive and thrive together as one world. Once we sort of can look at it like that, then it becomes much easier, because you realize what's going on and you realize that your decisions do affect things. So you bring it into your everyday sort of buying decisions and where you spend your money and how.
So just a couple of examples from me is that, I mean, you go to business meetings and I love to have the free coffee and the free biscuits, and you get these fantastic luxury biscuits and whatever. But actually, I know that biscuits are really bad for us. So that my solution to biscuits years ago was very simple. I don't buy biscuits. I never buy biscuits. Therefore, there's no biscuits in the house, so there's no temptation to say, oh, I must have a biscuit, all right? But the second one is with the supermarkets. You go to the checkout, and at the level that children are at, so it's sort of at waist height for ourselves, the whole thing is just solid wall-to-wall sweets. Now, we know that sweets are not good for us, and so why are supermarkets selling wall-to-wall sweets? So these are a couple of examples of behaviors which, you know, we or the supermarkets can help us with. So give us some examples, Liz. What can we do to break out of this, to break free of this overconsumption? Your wonderful words here.
There's so many things, aren't there, in all the areas of our life, because how we spend our money comes into all of it. It could be about travel, it could be about food, it could be about things you buy. So it's really about how we spend our money, and that will be completely different depending on the individual. So somebody might travel a lot more than somebody else. Somebody might buy a lot more tech. Somebody might eat a lot of meats. So it really does depend on your individual lifestyle. And what I would say is there's so much content out there that if you're kind of a bit overwhelmed and you're not sure where to start, don't be put off, because there's so many great organizations that give guidance on what to do, how to tackle it. So I think you'll get quite inspired if you're not sure where to start. A quick internet search should steer you and give you some inspiration pretty quickly, I think.
Brilliant. Well, I'll just take this opportunity of talking a little bit about the trees, and then let's come to Amanda. Amanda, your take on a consumer, because it sounds as if you're from the US, so you're an even bigger overconsumer than we are in the UK. But before you give you a minute to think about that, but before we do that, let me just talk about the trees, because a lot of people I talk to still, they're aware of climate change. If you put a questionnaire in front of them, they'll tick a box to say they're worried about it. But in terms actually of what people are doing, I think in the UK we've got a high level of recycling. But in terms of people being willing to give up their car, turn down the heating, there's all sorts of things people seem to be still stuck on being willing to do. But there is something very, very easy that we can all do, makes a huge difference, which is to plant trees. So Alistair was talking earlier about planting billions of trees for carbon credits. Now, at the simple level, what we do at N0CO2, we plant trees. We plant a few trees for you, a lot of trees, as many trees or as few trees as you want. It all makes a difference, and all of those trees create to transforming people's lives, because the planting trees is all done in areas where people are living in extreme poverty. And to put that into context, it means that people are living on less than $1.90 a day. So if you go to London and you try and get a cup of coffee, you're probably going to be charged double that. So basically $1.90 is probably half the cost of a reasonable cup of coffee. So do take a look at our website, that's NoCO2.org. Take a look at Donate, and I hope you're going to be really surprised and pleased at how many trees you get for your donation. So thank you very much for that, if you'd like to take a look. So Amanda, we're all consumers. You're a consumer, you're an American consumer, so you're even more dangerous than the rest of us. Tell us about, you've given a wonderful argument here about the billion people in the world who don't have electricity. What's your take on this point about overconsumption?
Yeah, I think it's a good point to take a step back, self-reflection, and realize, what can I do to be more energy efficient? And I think it's billions of little choices from lots of different people that'll add up. But when I think of large scale, what's contributing to carbon emissions, it's electricity, transportation, and industrial purposes, right? And so that's our energy mix. And how can we make our energy mix cleaner? Yes, we can, in well-developed nations, sure, energy efficiency and reducing consumption, you can try to shrink the pie graph, if you will, entirely, right? But we're not going to go back to using no energy, right? So what is the mix? What is the energy mix you want to achieve, and how do you achieve deep decarbonization? And the countries, the electrical grids that have achieved this, it's predominantly nuclear and hydro heavy.
Super. Okay, so Liz, back over to you. Just remind people, would you, about your own book as a climate author?
Sure, yeah, it's called Spend Green and Save the World, and it's got lots of practical guidance in there, as well as how we can actually go about implementing it in our busy lives, and how it can be part of a wider system change, because it focuses on the root cause of the problem, which is what's going on in our heads, and how that feeds the system, and vice versa.
Amazing. So I really like this. So it's about what's going on in our heads. That's absolutely terrific. I think that makes it a little bit easier, because we start with what's going on in our heads. Take a look at Liz's book, and that makes going to make a difference.
Yeah,
so,
I think, because I think as well, the fact that people say we need a system change, I think that can seem quite off-putting to people, because it's like, well, what can I do about a system change? That's too insurmountable, there's nothing we can do. But actually it does start with a small number of people creating culture change, because they're thinking differently and acting differently, and that absolutely can spread. So yeah, I think take positive thoughts that we can actually do something, and get out there and just do something today, because it make you feel better about yourself as well, about your contribution, and loads of the actions in there have massive well-being benefits as well. So I'd say
So for you, Liz, you're talking about, for you, system change is this culture change.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, how we think about what we do with our money, how we spend it, how we spend our lives.
Fantastic. So let's come over to Rihanna. Rihanna, you sat in on all of these webinars this week. What struck you as the as like to come off mute and just tell us your view, Rihanna, of what struck you as the what are the highs and lows been for you with all you've heard these last couple of weeks?
I think something that I think it was Rob that mentioned, I think he's planting in the Amazon right now. Not in the Amazon, sorry, I think it's the Atlantic rainforest.
Yeah.
That was like the one thing that when he was talking to that about how it's quite kind of early stages still, but it's already started to bring wildlife back to there already. So that was the one thing that really did stick with me. And I think it just kind of proves that planting and restoring these rainforests is very important for the planet, to bring all these species back to kind of where they're meant to be. That was the one thing that really did stick with me. And I think if that doesn't make you think, action needs to be made, then I don't know what does, because it's such a nice thing to hear. And I think he also said there was a lot more rainfall after they started planting more there as well. Yeah, that was like the main thing that really did stick with me.
And any lows in what you've heard, Rihanna?
I think today, Alistair, when he said that, it's still kind of a long way going, and that it still needs to be done, and that if the rainforests are gone, then that's kind of it. That's like a big thing, and it's obviously still kind of getting there, but it is still a low that it is still such a big thing that it's still happening. That was probably my low, really.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks ever so much for that, Rihanna. Just to let people know, that was Rob Delart. I think he was speaking on the 8th or 9th of November. And he was talking about what he's done in the valley in the Atlantic rainforest, which is the other rainforest in Brazil. And absolutely, he talked about how planting trees has caused the temperature to be lower. And we had a great discussion about the temperatures. So, I mean, just to give the very, very simple example for everybody, in the UK, we had the hottest summer ever. And we've got a tree in our garden, and it was really, really nice to sit under that tree in the shade. And of course, when you think about it, that tree, I'm sitting out there for a few hours, but that tree's out there the whole time. And as long as it's got some water, then the leaves are going to stay on. The leaves are going to be absorbing the sunshine. They're going to be not falling off. Obviously, if the tree gets short of water, the leaves fall off. But that tree is shading, not just me, it's shading the soil, and a cluster of trees. Basically, you can feel the moisture, you can feel the lower temperature that there is in that cluster of trees. So the more trees we take out, the more we're exposing the soil, exposing the ground, and basically making the whole place much, much drier. So if you've got trees, if you can plant trees, that's all good. Many people can't. We need to plant a lot of trees. We need to plant trees in the thousands, and that's where the donation to N0CO2 comes in. Please plant as many trees as you can. So over to Amanda and then to Liz for your final words, and then we'll close off. So Amanda, final words from you.
Yeah, I really just wanted to take a second to tie the nuclear cause to your organization. I know your passion is planting trees, and so when we think about the scale needed for how we are going to reach that 1.5 or no more than 1.5 degrees C warming, it's going to take a lot of land to plant these trees. And so you're talking about land for trees, land for farming, land for solar, wind, and renewables. And so that's why nuclear would be a great partner, because it is so energy dense. We don't take up a lot of land. We have a super small land footprint, so you can plant more trees. So a nuclear power plant that powers a city of 1 million people, that's going to take up 1 square kilometer. If you were to power that same city of 1 million people with solar, that would be about 200 square kilometers. If you were going to power that city with wind, it would be about 800 square kilometers. And so we in nuclear, we really do care about the environment. I do personally. I want to see these beautiful places around the world, and I love gardening. My husband is big into gardening, trees. We have an apple orchard. And so I think that is a great kind of combination of our two passions.
Amazing. So that, Amanda, that is fantastic data. So what you're saying is that a city of 1 million people can be powered by a nuclear power station which occupies 1 square kilometer. Solar would take 200 square kilometers and wind would take 800 square kilometers. Okay, that might be offshore. But my takeaway from you, Amanda, is this vision of this small modular reactor arriving by truck, being driven across the countryside in Kenya, parking up, and we will then run for 7 to 10 years without people having to change the fuel. So you've put that on the table for me. I'm blown away by that. Thank you so much. Remember you for that, Amanda. Thank you. And Liz, over to you.
Final thoughts. I think it's just don't be put off. Don't be put off by thinking it's too much and that you won't make a difference with what you do. A few people coming together, creating change has happened in the past and can happen now. So go out there, find something that interests you and do something to make yourself feel better and have an impact.
Fantastic. So Liz, you seem to be on a roll with these the last few days over these wonderful phrases, and I have to pick up on these great phrases. So you're talking you're saying that we're all caught up in this overconsumption and how we need to break free from the overconsumption. And for you, system change means culture change.
It all comes from our heads, right? That's where it all starts. That's where the system came from in the first place, from what's going on in our heads. And the current system feeds off of that kind of lower thinking primal part of our brain that's very animalistic and thinks about, yourself and thinks about getting more. And we're kind of caught in the trap of that within the current system. It feeds that part of our brain and vice versa. But once we start realizing that, it then gives us the opportunity to use our higher thinking brain and think, how can we come together? How can we solve problems? And how can we benefit all of our well-being and the planet?
Amazing. Thank you so much. And so COP27, it's approaching the last couple of days. As Alistair said, negotiations are probably going to overrun. So from my point of view, I'm really, really hoping for cooperation, collaboration, and compassion for the billions of people who are suffering and will suffer from climate change unless this is sorted. So that's what I'm looking for from the leaders of the 35,000 people who are there. They're there to make a difference, and I'm expecting them to make a difference under these headings of cooperation, collaboration, and compassion. And so, Rihanna, just turning to you, big thank you to you for your efforts here with all the material, with all the clips that we're going to be doing, the replays we're doing, and big thank you to your boss Gary for supporting this activity. So it's been as ever. This is our last webinar. It's been absolutely amazing. So pleased you can all join us. Fantastic. Let's hope for those conclusions we want from the last couple of days at COP. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.